Neha Patel, welcome to the Rich Equation podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm really honored that you're here. I'm super excited to get into all types of topics today with you. Let's kind of start with, and before we get started, we actually know some similar amazing people. And I want to shout out Dr. Ganatra because not only is he been like sort of a mentor and a good friend, and he really is an amazing soul, he's the one who pushed me over the edge to start the podcast.
I love it.
And he was my first guest on the podcast, and you guys are all mutual friends, and it's how we all ran to each other. And so just shout out to Dr. R. Love it.
Yeah, we love their entire family. His wife's a great friend, and I see her a lot, and she hears me talk all the time, but she still listens to my podcast, and I'm amazed. I'm like, I can't believe you're still listening to me. You want to hear me that often or that much. So they're amazing.
Well, it's always amazing to meet good people and be in these circles of good people. And so I'm just really excited to have this conversation with you. You've been on a pretty amazing journey, both in entrepreneurship, in business, now into sort of self-development, conscious parenting, increasing awareness, and all these types of really topics that I'm super interested in. And more importantly, learning the contrasts of all these things. And so what I'd love to kind of start with is just maybe get us a little bit of background about how you got here, maybe your business journey a little bit. You don't have to go that deep, but like just to give a little bit of contrast to the listener about the work that you were doing in the past and why you're doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure. So I was in IT, and I worked for a software company for 15 years, and it was the same software company. People thought I was crazy. Why would you stay at a company for 15 years? But it was a small kind of mom and pop software company that just grew, and the people were amazing there. And I never thought that not just what I learned technically, but the people and the relationships, how that would lead me to where I am today. So it was a group of people who I've never met people who ran a company the way they did. It was all about love. It was about relationships. And a lot of people talk about that, putting people first. And I think it sometimes becomes something we just say, but they lived it. And I saw them use, compassion and love and kindness at people first. And it's funny because they did it sometimes at the expense of the business in the short term, but in the long term, there was so much of a benefit by doing that. And I'm still surprised that more companies don't do it this way. I think sometimes we just, our sights on the short-term stuff and gains. So we're afraid to make those decisions. But they taught me so much about life and how to work. I always say that I had the best professional upbringing at that company, because I think it's like our childhood of, those first few years where you work, it kind of defines how you work in any other company. And so they were incredible, 15 years. But then we got really big, and private equity came in, and, it just became very corporate-y. And I remember telling a friend, every day I walk in, I feel like a part of my soul is dying. And I couldn't do it. I was like, I'm done. I think it's just a sign that I've got to move on. And so I had a idea for an app for schools. And so I pursued that for a little bit, and it was tough, and I made some mistakes, and it's kind of my badge of failure, that every entrepreneur loves to have, and I wear it proudly. But after that, then I started a company with my co-founder, Amna, which is called Hatch Brighter. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to teach kids the principles that people like me and you, Ranesh, all these people are trying to put out there and spread the word on, but we're doing it in our 30s and 40s. But how different, how amazing would our kids' experiences in life be if they learned it at a young age versus the 30 and the 40? And so, I believe that whether it's Jay Shetty or Tony Robbins or religion or spirituality, they're all pulling from the same source. So we want to pull from that same source as well and make it fun and simple for kids to learn. And it came from just us being inspired by being moms and saying, what is the most important thing we can teach our kids? And we realized there wasn't much around this. So we took it on, and we're trying to make it easy for parents to bring into their homes.
I love it. Let's slow all of that down.
Okay.
So let's go first into, because I love the concept of, and I'm very curious about this, because at our business, we really try to keep people first, but you're right, it is challenging. In your experience, what worked so well? So it's really easy to get short-sighted, perhaps focusing on the numbers, focusing on short-term decisions, maybe even looking good, or the fear of looking bad, or setting bad precedent of mistakes, or what have you, all these things that let's say leaders or decision makers have in front of them. What do you think that the company did really well specifically in those terms that people can learn from or that can take away?
So a majority of the people that worked there, they were religious. They were part of a, organized religion, but they didn't bring it to work. But I really believe, and this is kind of what inspired Hatch too, is the principles that they learned there, they brought into work. And so the values that they had, they came first, and they were not willing to budge, right? If someone needed help, if someone was going through something really tough and it was hurting the business, let's have a loving, compassionate conversation and figure out how we can help them. And that's just how they operated. It wasn't even a strategy, right? A lot of these companies now, it's like, here's a strategy, make people feel loved and like you care about them, and this is how you should present it. But it wasn't a strategy. They were just, that's how they were. And so I think every single employee just felt that love and care, and it was genuine. It was authentic. You can't fake it. And I remember making mistakes at work. I made big mistakes. I was in charge of our IT group, and we had a big conference call, 1,500 employees, and I screwed up. My team screwed up. And you would think the CEO would get upset. And he's like, all he said to me was, Neha, you're amazing. It's okay. I trust you. That was it. That was it. And so what does someone do then? You go back and you're just left with your own thoughts, and you're actually more productive in kind of looking back at what happened and being better, because that person just treated you that way. So you're not even upset at them. You're just like, oh my gosh, I don't want to disappoint them again. How do I get better? That's just one example, but it was things like that. It was the trust, the faith they had, and you do the right thing and good things will just happen. It was incredible how they were able to do that.
You know what shows up for me when I hear that too is that, and this is coming from me and not my experience with other people, is like, I know that when I am grounded in my own confidence, I can show up that way.
Yes.
But when I'm insecure, or I feel any fear, or I feel like, oh my God, I'm going to look bad or whatever, I show up in a way that I don't want to be as a leader. And I think there's something there, and we can unpack that later too. But like, I think that there's something about leaders focusing on their own confidence and their own junk and their own stuff to then be able to like, it's okay. It happens. Crap happens. It's like, Neha, you made me look bad. How embarrassing are you? Right?
You nailed it. And I think parenting is the same way.
Yeah.
We need to work on our own stuff rather than our kids.
So I agree with you also in this whole, the consciousness and the awareness and I just implemented in the last couple of years a set of company values, and I didn't really realize how important this sort of, and I guess whether it's religion or business values, like these quote unquote commandments. So like, everyone, whatever decision we're making, let's look back at the values to see, are we in alignment with the values? Not about the numbers. What's the profit and loss? What's the cost benefit? It's the, are we doing the right thing? Are we in integrity? Are we building trust? Are we, whatever the values could be? It seems to be something that's worked for us within our business. And then interlacing values of family and love and care and compassion. But it's not easy. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, 100%. And I've seen it I've seen it be implemented in the later years of the company by new leadership and the private equity company. And they did the right things on the surface, but people feel the energy. People know whether it's authentic. People know whether you are abiding by that when you have to make the tough decisions. And guess what? It didn't work. It didn't work. So
Yeah.
it's so true. There's a lot of people that follow the playbook, but you have to live it, and it has to be authentic, 100%.
Another thing that I want to say, and this pivots into our next topic, which is about parenting and kids, is I felt like my life of being a leader really changed when I had kids. It didn't change when I got married. It didn't change. It changed mostly when I had children, because I had this perspective that I never had without kids. Like, I would drive people really hard. I wouldn't think about, well, my employee just had to stay up all night because their kid was sick. And my expectation was, I need you there at 8:30 for whatever reason I believed. And that shifted completely, which then gets me to talk about conscious parenting, right? And so I really want to go deep into this with you. And this is coming from my own curiosity. And I don't know if you can relate to this, but I am on this, like, I'm curious right now about this contrast that we've created. And so what I mean by that is, we come from a generation of maybe immigrant parents, perhaps people who are really driven, pushing you to get good grades. There's a process, there's a program, get into school, work really hard for your grades, do extracurricular activities, go to a great school, create a great job, blah, 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 blah. I think that there was very little awareness and very little, let's call it consciousness in the parenting feeling process. And now we have in some ways corrected that or overcorrected that in some ways with this conscious parenting, in terms of making sure that, kids understand, how are they feeling? How do I deal with these emotions? Yep. We don't know what the long-term outcome of that is. And so I'd love to get your perspective about this, because I know and don't like, I'm damaged in my own ways based on my upbringing, but I'm also really grateful and successful, and I have certain behaviors and habits that lend to living in this material world and learning through that. I'd love to hear your thoughts about sort of this contrast.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about that, because I agree with you. There's things that, people like you and I have learned that we want to hold on to, and then we worry, are our kids not going to learn that? Are they not going to be tough? And hey, if you got to stay up till 2 a.m., 3 a.m., sometimes you got to do it. If you're feeling a little sick, you got to push through it. So I'm with you on that, because I sometimes find myself in what's that balance. I think the difference is, back in the day, our parents weren't as conscious. They were in a different place. There was a place that they were in a place of, we're trying to survive, right? We immigrated from India, and we got to make sure we've got the business or a job and money. And so that was their priority. So they didn't have the extra time and mental space to say, hey, what are the nice to haves, right? The other thing is that the world has changed, right? So the social media and the technology, there's certain things that I think were built into society back in the day that naturally helped us be mindful and helped us with some of those things. So there wasn't a need to really make this intentional effort to make sure we are incorporating that into our lives. It just naturally happened. And now, because of the world, way things are, we have to make an effort. And it's becoming more important than ever to make sure our kids have the time and space to be confident about themselves. I think we learned it a different way, but our kids are now up against things that we didn't have to deal with. And so it's taking a harder hit on their mental health or their confidence, right? Social media, I can quickly say something mean to you. It's easy. I'm in the comfort of my home. Easy. So I think that's why there's this need now. And of course, many people are in a place where, okay, I've got the job, I've got that stuff. What else do I need to teach my kids? And right. And then we have the ability to say, okay, let's take it further. So As far as the balance is concerned, I think our kids will figure it out, right? So one of the things I always hear is people say, well, I don't want my kid to be entitled. We're doing well and we've got money.
Sure.
And so I want to teach them to be grateful. It's like, okay, well, if you're living in $1 million home and you have all these cars, it's hard because they're going to see how you're living. But if your kid is entitled and is lazy and doesn't work, guess what? Real life will teach them. Let them learn on their own. They will figure it out. They'll go to a job, they might get fired. So I think having faith in just life teaching them, whereas us as parents feeling like I've got to control everything and teach everything, I really think kids' ability to learn and reflect just blows my mind. And since I quit my job 3 years ago, I've been spending more time with my kids, and it's incredible. I mean, just seeing and implementing everything that we're trying to teach, they learn. They're very smart if you give them the time and space. And it's kind of like the story where my boss didn't yell at me. If we allow our kids to do the same versus, hey, I'm going to punish you, or I'm going to put you in a timeout. Now, all of a sudden, the learning has become, it goes away because I'm in timeout and I'm feeling mad at my parent because they took my, iPad away or whatever. And it becomes about that versus just sit with your thoughts and figure it out. Think about it. Think about what you did. And they do. Oftentimes they do reflect and figure it out.
Well, there's a lot of parents too that, what advice do you have for parents? Because as a parent, you want to provide a great life for your kids. Maybe you're having struggle finding harmony between work and personal life, which I think always kind of ebbs and flows. And, you need to really put intention in both parts of your life there. What advice do you have for parents on this journey that how can we show up better for our kids? How can we learn how to communicate better?
There's some amazing people. Dr. Shefali is one.
Yes.
Yeah. She's incredible. And she had a very unpopular opinion and was very bold about it years ago. Now it's still somewhat accepted, but she's like, parents, you're the problem.
You're the problem. Yeah.
Yeah. And she was, her delivery was always very just in your face, which I love. I think so, sometimes maybe people get offended, but I'm like, hey, just give it to me straight, right? And I'll figure out what I have to do. But I think incorporating that stuff, the lifestyle, right? I talk to parents all the time where it's like, yeah, we had 3 birthdays to go to on Saturday and then 2 more on Sunday and then this and that, right? And my kids' schedules are packed. You have to let them pause and be. I think that's the biggest thing that parents have control over. Just those moments of, we're just going to go to the park. And guess what? You're just going to play in the sand. I'm not going to always entertain. We're
not going to have all this regimented stuff.
Yes. The unstructured play, but also everything doesn't have to be a production. I joke, like I have a cousin who's super creative and she's awesome. And every time we go, like there will be a craft. And it's like, what happened to kids just figuring it out? Let them figure it out. So we have all this time and we've learned a lot too, but we try and structure everything and orchestrate everything and give them all this stuff. They'll figure it out. Let them be, let them play, let them be with their own thoughts. I think that's the biggest thing, is giving them that time and space, whether it's to journal or just even explore nature. I think that's what we as parents can do, as well as, of course, hopefully parents are exploring, their own kind of personal growth and self-help things that they know they need to work on, and vocalizing that with your kids is great. I always do that. Hey, I'll tell my kids like, yeah, I messed up and here's what I did and here's what I'm feeling, but here's what I'm going to do. Right. And so vocalizing some of that. So everyone
setting an example.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you're not overcorrecting as much as people think, because that's kind of, we grew up in a way that the parents didn't have anything planned. They said, there's daylight, go outside. Right. Yeah. But now with social media or I know my wife looks at so many different Instagrams and social media that like gets ideas and this and that. And not that that's bad, because I think it teaches her how to be a better, more engaged mom, but it also it can be overwhelming.
It can be.
It can be overwhelming. Oh my God, look at all these people doing all these things. I need to do more. I need to show up more. I need to have more activities. And perhaps you're right.
Yeah. And it's hard, that battle. Like, so my co-founder with Hatch, Amna, we always joke, we're like, thank God we have each other, because it's so easy to look around and feel like, oh my gosh, I got to put my kid in this, or I got to do this. So my daughter, she's in 4th grade, and she finished school end of May, and the report card came out, and I'm like, I haven't even looked at it yet. I haven't even logged in to look at it. And a lot of parents would be like, what's wrong with you? But she's like, I totally get it. So it's nice to have that, but sometimes it is easy to get caught up in what's happening around you, because we do want the best for our kids. And I understand where that comes from. You don't want them to be left behind or not have the, best and greatest. And you want to make sure you're on top of it as a parent. But I think it's important to be aware as a parent of those emotions that we feel as well, and then do what truly is right for us and our family and our kids versus feeling the external pressure.
I think that one of the most challenging things is just being present.
Yes.
And maybe not most challenging thing, but perhaps the thing that is the most important and perhaps creates the most effectiveness to this whole process is with being a parent, or even a good spouse, is just being present and not trying to be somewhere else or worry about something or manage an expectation or whatever. When you work with kids and you're, going on your own, this whole experiment, right? Because it's always changing and evolving. What are you seeing the results with the kids? What do you experience in them?
So with my own kids, what I want to do is I want them to be able to trust themselves. And what I'm seeing with my own kids is their sense of self. They know who they are. They understand, like my youngest, she's 5. And I remember we went to this climbing gym thing, and she was on top of, on really high, and it was her first time. And I could see the fear in her face. And I had that moment that you were kind of referencing earlier. Do I push her, or do I just let her be, right? Like, come on, you can do it, do more,
power through,
right? Be tough. And so I was like, you could go to the top one. And I did that. And later she fell, like when she came down, she like cut her lip open. And it wasn't because she went to the top, but I felt guilt because I knew in that moment, I saw it in myself of, I should tell her to trust her gut, right? She should trust her gut. And those are the things I want them to do. And I see them do many times, but she got conflicted because here I was saying this to her. And so later I said, hey, I'm really sorry. I could tell that you didn't want to do it, but I ignored that, and I ignored my own gut, and I pushed you to do it. And then you got hurt. And she's like, Mama, it's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. It'll get better. It's okay. So I see those moments where, or like we walk 2 miles to Yogurtland, and Yogurtland's closed, and my oldest goes, Mama, you just have to go with the flow sometimes. It's okay. We'll go somewhere else. So those are the things I want to see in them. Life, right. Certain things happen in life, and it's not about perfection, but it's how do you respond, right? How do you react? And that's what I'm seeing in them, right? They say something mean to someone, how they reflect and go, I shouldn't have done that. This is what I should do next time. I'm like, yes, that's what I love. I don't mind that it happened, but are you learning from it? Are you reflecting? Are you not taking it personally? Are you not creating that negative self-talk of, I'm a terrible person because I did that to that person? No, I did it. I'm going to apologize. Here's what I should have done. And that's what I'm seeing in kids, that they learn on their own. And I think the hardest thing as a parent, and Amna and I talk about it all the time, is the patience, because in that moment, you want them to do the right thing. And it's not about that moment. It's about using that moment so that they can learn certain values and principles and do the right thing the 20 times in the future that's going to happen.
You started a podcast called Unpacking Yourself. Tell me about what inspired you to do that, and tell me about what you're learning as you're unpacking.
Yes, that has been it started as a passion project. I just have always, ever since I can remember, 18, my parents had gotten divorced at 18, and that's what made me want to kind of answer some of these big questions in life. Why did these things happen? I started reading, and I just got really intrigued by life and people. And I always loved it. And I never did much with it other than have great conversations with people. And then I just had this feeling, I was like, I want to get this stuff out there. And the biggest motivation was I realized I didn't have a problem talking about my hard stuff and my personal experiences, but I could see sometimes it was hard for other people. And so I thought, okay, I've been given this trait. What do I do with it? And I realized I've been made this way, or I have this trait because I should use it and put it all out there, because I know there are many people that feel the same way or have the same thoughts, but they're afraid to talk about it. They don't even want to admit it to their best friend or their husband or whoever. And so that's what inspired it of, I'm cool with putting it out there. It doesn't make me feel uncomfortable. Let me just do it. And it's been great putting it out there and getting messages from people saying, oh my gosh, I felt like you were talking about me, or I had that experience, and it makes it worth it. But that's how it started.
I love it. What have you learned about the process or about yourself that perhaps you didn't expect?
Everyone always says, do you get anything from doing the podcast? And I'm like, yes.
Of course.
Right? It's more,
of course.
Sometimes I feel like, gosh, I feel like I'm getting a lot. I said I was, trying to help other people, but I'm getting a lot because you reflect on your life and who you are. And I think it helps you become more confident about who you are. And going back to even, our kids reflecting. So with Hatchbrighter, we have a journal, and it's just, it's a way for our kids to pause and reflect and go, oh yeah, I did that awesome thing today. And so, when people used to ask me, what's your story? What did you do? And I would always go, I don't know. It's not a big deal. I don't know, just this. And when I did the podcast and I did one on that, it forced me to stop and think about it and go, hey, wait, that's a pretty cool story. Everyone has a cool story. They just maybe haven't stopped and really thought about it. So I think, I've learned to know myself even better and be confident about who I am, and notice the moments where I do make mistakes, but figure out the learning from it. And every week I get to do that from just daily life experiences. It forces me to do it every week, at least, if not more.
Do you find yourself like journaling more or meditating more, or like what is the process for you to go deeper into a certain topic? Does it just like hit you that, this week, whatever topic you're going to come up with that week, like it just hits you? I'd love to hear more about like how do you specifically go deeper, or is there a meditative process, or what's your daily routine look like?
Yeah. So meditation, I think, led me to where I am today, meaning quitting my job. I started meditating 6 months before I quit my job, and I'm 100% confident that it is because of the meditation. It's about me kind of being more connected with who I am and having the confidence to leave, when I was in a good position in this company, and I could have continued to, do that. And so it doesn't help me every week necessarily. That's not my process to come up with the topic, but I know it has helped me just from a foundational perspective. For me, I love just experiencing life. Like you said, it's about being present and reminding ourselves to be present. And somehow the connections happen. I've literally had weeks where there's a topic I do and 3 different incidents with different people, and it just brings me to
manifests. Yeah.
And so it also gives me the confidence of, keep going. You're meant to do this because of the ease at which the topics and the connections happen. There've been times where I sat down to write and I think I'm doing a topic, and then you get a download of, wait, no, do this. So that's how I do it. I wish I could tell you I have this perfect process, but I don't. The topics just kind of come, and I love just getting it from day-to-day life.
What keeps you up at night, or what are you most afraid of?
That's a good question. So the business that I'm doing right now, it's a very meaningful, it has a great mission. And the the monetary aspect, figuring out how to make revenue from it and do all that, it can get in the way. It can get in the way of just doing meaningful work. And so times where sometimes I get in my head, it's about, wait, you're supposed to be further. You've been doing this for this many years. How could, you should be doing this, or your friends doing, all those thoughts kind of get in my head. Sometimes that's what gets in the way, but I know that's my mind. And it's a great exercise for me to remind myself of the mission and the purpose. And when we get stories from one family and how their journaling helped them and their family, it makes it all worth it. So my mind gets in the way at times. But I think,
it's your high producer child training.
Exactly. No, you're right.
It's like this, I should be much farther. It's already been a year and a half or whatever.
Yeah. And as much as I know that, it's not like
it's still
into it. Yeah.
No, we're not immune to it. Yeah.
So yeah, that. And I think just with Hatch, what we're trying to do is get people to prioritize the inner stuff. And I think that, how do we spread that message faster, at least with the work we're doing? How do we get it into more homes and parents, and how do we make it easier for parents to do? Because even with the journals, we've tried to make it super simple, but it's hard. People are working, you get tired, you don't want to do it at the end of the day. And so I think that's the other place where my mind always is, of how do we make this easier for people so that they can incorporate it into their lives?
I love that. You know what shows up for me as you're speaking to, and this is throughout the podcast, I was just thinking that, we don't have enough of these conversations. And, forget about just the Indian community. I think men and women even don't have enough of these conversations. Parents and their businesses, like the relationship between what goes on at work and what goes on at home.
Yeah.
And I find it really fascinating because I find that when you're in this zone, when you're in this moment of presence, actually everything is less energy. It's more effortless.
Yes.
It sounds like effort, but it's actually more effortless.
Yeah.
And everything else in contrast to that is actually more effort, more energy. But we're so used to it. And we're so used to exerting that energy that it's okay. We've become sort of immune to it. And so, I don't know where I was trying to go with that, but I think it's just fascinating that, I'm glad we're having the conversation. Maybe people will start having these conversations more at their dinner table.
Yeah, no, you're right. And before the pandemic, we used to get a group of it was moms at the time, where we would have 8 or 10 moms, and we would pick a topic, and we had the best discussions. And we did that over Zoom after, and then we kind of stopped doing it, but it was incredible. It was amazing. It was different people we didn't know, or a friend's friend, and we would just meet in person, and people would come. They were busy, but they came, and they would leave going, oh my gosh, that just fed my soul. Like, that was incredible.
Yes.
So I think you're right. We don't do this enough.
Well, again, I appreciate you being here. As I wrap up, let me ask you a final question is for you. What does it mean to live a rich life?
I love it. For me, I think it comes down to love. I think that's who we are as people. That's who we are at the core of our being, regardless of how people behave and things we may say to one another that might be hurtful. I think we really are made out of love. And I think when we think about what we leave with, that's the only thing that we leave with, or we leave behind, right? That people feel. And so for me in my own life, I want to always try and live from a place of love, act from a place of love. I think the more love you have, it doesn't matter. But you might be not making a ton of money, but if you're happy and you have family and you have that love around you, and you have love just as the person you are, I think you will live a rich life, 100%.
Well, I love it all. I really honor you for the service and the work that you're doing. And I really appreciate you being here. Continue to support you on your podcast journey and as you unpack and trailblaze for all of us. So I really appreciate you being here today and sharing.
Thank you so much. My pleasure. This was so much fun.
And if people want to reach out to you, we'll put all the social media links, but if they wanted to support you, just go to the website, right? Hatchbrighter.com, I think it is.
Yep. They can find me there. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Neha, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thank you.